Well, there are many things that I take from this gathering, and there are two things I'd like to share in thinking about soul in the future. And first, though, I'll begin with a warning. I know some of you were interested in metrics. You know, how do we know we've made progress? Well, in the early days, it's 25 years or so ago when I met Peter and Charlie Kiefer and others, there were ways that I was a new component to this process, and we discovered that what often happened at the end of some of these meetings we'd facilitate is that I would cry. And I really can't imagine that I'm going to get through the next 40 minutes or so before everyone leaves without crying. So I'm not worried about it, and we always determined that if Sherry cried, it must have been a good meeting. So I just wanted to alert you that could happen, because I certainly think that this has been an amazing meeting. So as I look forward, there were two things. And it was important to prepare Abdullah because, of course, I could talk for a long time about this, I think. In this circle, we had imagined that we would also include voices not present. And there's a voice I would like to include of one of our elders who is no longer with us, who, to me, was very firmly rooted in our values and principles. And so, as we go forward, I hope that one of the things we continue, are holding on to our important values and principles. And the value and principle I want to talk about is relative to soul's purpose, is our focus on the interdependent development of people, each of us as individuals, and the organizations that we're a part of, as being fundamentally a concern that draws us together, knowing that if those two things happen, greater things become possible. At a personal level, though, our lives change. And so it's Bill O'Brien that I would like to bring into the room. And I went looking for something and found something else that I thought was more appropriate to share with you as just a little of what he said. He passed on about 5 years ago and wrote quite a bit toward the end of his life to try to summarize things for him, but also, I think, for us. So on this issue of individuals and organizations, he reflected on his experience in the insurance industry. That's where he lived most of his life. And he said the insurance industry was known as the walking army of the disenchanted. Okay? The walking army of the disenchanted. And so he talked about his experience of being lower in the hierarchy. And this is what I wrote down from his notes. The hardest part of being at the bottom of the hierarchy was an inner feeling of absence. The absence of the satisfaction, the excitement, the respect that comes with building and being part of an institution that is improving how it serves society. Maybe the severest pain is the absence of the inner feeling that comes from contributing to an organization that is in turn contributing to a better world. So I believe that what soul has been and what I hope soul will be in the future is a commitment to a totally different kind of experience than Bill was describing, and we know many people have in our organizations. And what he said as three things that he thought were important in terms of what we could do, what each of us could do as we talk about action going forward, is to pay never-ending attention to our own growth so that it starts with us, that we devote ourselves similarly to the well-being and development of those who report to us, since most people in this room are managers of one sort or another, or are leaders in a more informal capacity. And the last thing he said was that it's our duty. He didn't use the word duty, but I think at essence it's not a bad way to describe it, that we create the cultural architecture to respect each individual, the dignity of all work, to value learning and maturing, and to promote the pursuit of excellence. And in his notion, this environment created something that was worthy of the commitment of the individual and would serve certainly Professor Eunice's word to us about leaving things better than when we got here. So that's the first big idea, was about soul's values. The second has to do with the soul of soul. So when we started in the orientation session on Sunday, somebody asked me, well, is soul, S-O-L, called that because soul, S-O-U-L, in English, is important? And was it named that way intentionally? And so I said, well, it wasn't named that way intentionally, but it's hard to get around the fact that soul comes up quite a bit. And so as a personal reflection, I want to say that I love being in this part of the world because I pray more. It's quite remarkable to have a structure that integrates one's whole life. And while we're talking about the external action that we all take, I hope that one of the things that we'll take away as we all digest our experience in these past few days is interior action as well. And so, for me, part of that is about prayer. It has to do with deepening the relationship for me to another way to look at what binds us all together. And so it's really that call to the interior life that I think is speaking to what soul is about too. Because one of the things Bill said, and I'll close my remarks with this, and this is what gets quoted more often, that we kind of remember him as reminding us that our effectiveness is going to be a result of our interior condition. It's like we can learn a lot about the tools and the practices, but if our hearts aren't in the right place, it's not going to matter. And I think at the extreme, as Peter was describing, using 1 1/3 earth as we have no future, I believe if we don't nurture our interior life, we have no future either. And this nurtures my soul. So as soulmates, I bid you all blessings and safe travels, and my deep gratitude.